For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures. Paul calls this message something important right at the start. Not secondary, not optional, not one teaching among many. He says it is of first importance. That tells you something about how central this is to everything that follows in the faith. Before Paul talks about daily living, endurance, service, or spiritual growth, he anchors everything here: the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua, the Messiah. And he says something else worth noticing. This is what I also received. In other words, Paul didn't invent this message. He didn't develop it as a personal philosophy. He received it and passed it on. That alone shifts how we understand the gospel. It was something handed down, not something constructed later. Then he summarizes it in a very simple structure. Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures. That phrase, "for our sins," is doing a lot of work. It means the death of Yeshua wasn't random or accidental. It wasn't merely the result of a political tension or human injustice. All those things were certainly involved. It was purposeful, intentional. The ideal is that his death dealt with something humanity could not deal with on its own. Sin isn't just external behavior. It's deeper than that. It's separation. It's a condition that human effort alone cannot resolve. So Paul says, Messiah died in accordance with the Scriptures, meaning this was not an afterthought. It was anticipated throughout the story of the Bible. Then he continues, that he was buried. That line is short, but it is important. It confirms the reality of death. There was no confusion about whether something unusual happened or whether Yeshua only appeared to die. Burial makes the point concrete. He truly died. And then Paul moves to the turning point, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the Scriptures. This is where everything changes. The resurrection is not just a hopeful symbol. It's a claim about reality. A claim that death was not the end. A claim that what looked like defeat was actually victory. A claim that God acted in history in a decisive way. Paul also repeats the phrase, in accordance with the Scriptures, again. That means the resurrection wasn't an unexpected twist. It was part of the unfolding story all along. A bicycle ride gives a simple way to think about it. There are moments when you're climbing a long stretch of road and everything feels like it's moving in one direction. Effort, resistance, exhaustion. From the outside, it might look like nothing is changing except the struggle. But then you reach a point where the terrain shifts, the climb ends, the perspective opens up, and you realize the whole route was leading somewhere you couldn't fully see while you were in the middle of it. In a similar way, the cross looks like the end of the story when you're standing at Friday. But Paul is writing from the perspective of Sunday, and from that perspective, the meaning becomes clearer. What looked like defeat becomes the center of hope. What looked like loss becomes the foundation of faith. What looked like the end becomes the beginning of something new. Paul isn't offering this as abstract theology. He's presented it as something he delivered to others, something meant to be passed on, something that forms the foundation of what believers proclaim. And for him, everything depends on it, not as one helpful ideal among many, but as the starting point that gives shape to everything else. So as you reflect on these verses, the question isn't complicated. What is at the center? Because Paul doesn't begin with advice about living better. He begins with an announcement about what God has already done. Yeshua the Messiah died. He was buried. And he was raised. And according to Paul, that message is not just important. It's of first importance. Well, thank you for joining me here today, my friends and my family, and anyone else who might be riding along and listening on this here Sunday. I hope to see you here tomorrow. I hope everyone had a restful and beneficial Shabbat, up and roaring to start the week. And I hope to see you here again tomorrow. And until then, Abba Willen, Shalom, Shalom.